in terms of explaining to our viewers, I think it falls to you rather than me to make these distinctions about the various types of land, as in public, private, community. Could you give a little sort of agitprop explanation of what the distinctions are?
Yes.
Public land being?
Public land being all the land that is held by national governments. So we have categories of lands that are held by national governments. And then we have community lands, lands that are held ordinarily by communities that have not been adjudicated. So like if you go, for instance, to the whole of Isiolo, a lot of that land is still community land. It is held by the people who live there, and they use it as a community. So the Constitution recognizes this category of land.
Question, if I may, even within this community land, we know of certain sort of upstanding individuals within society. They might belong to a community like the Maasai, the Samburu, who by their nature are pastoralist. But within this, there is one native son who, as a politician or something, owns huge swathes of that land. Therefore, individuals, where do they get their titles from? We're all, you know, herding our cattle together. Then all of a sudden, I own half of Samburu.
And now those are the issues that are supposed to be investigated by the National Land Commission.
I go back to the notion of investigation. You can't have a definition over which you run roughshod and change it. Because community was community. It belonged to us. Now I'm saying it belongs to me. And you're saying, let's investigate. What are we investigating?
We're investigating how you got it. Did you get it properly? Because under...
So there was a time when it was proper to have a bit of community land in a proper way?
Yes, because even under our old constitution, we had trust lands. And those were lands that were held by communities as well. But they were managed by county councils. And the county councils were inevitably corrupt. And they allocated these lands to private people. And that is why now the Community Land Bill is being developed, so that we have kind of like an oversight facility that kind of looks at how lands are managed, how lands are held, and how development takes place on these lands.
Right, the word private, perhaps, if I'm following closely, an explanation of what it is to have private land then.
Private land is all that land that has been adjudicated and titles have been issued. So probably, John, if you have a house and you have a title over it, that will be private land that you hold.
Titles, because I'm coming back by saying everything's a mess, and how are we going to sort out the mess? Title deeds, the idea of the speculation where people go there a week beforehand, land that I thought belonged to my grandfather belongs to the Pasha of Iran all of a sudden, and he's growing tomatoes. Where do you start to sort it out? Because I'm saying the Constitution is a document. This document is not going to right these wrongs simply by reading passages to people.
I think above all there must be political will. There must be the will as a nation, not just on one part, on all our parts, to see that this Constitution comes to life.
Okay. I go back to the provisions, because I'm saying, are you, for example, because one in certain areas one would call you that word, you're an activist, you're trying to help the people. And I'm saying, hand on heart, are you optimistic of success?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am, because you cannot kill. I mean, to kill hope and faith is to kill a people. And I think people in Kenya still have hope. They still have a belief that it is possible to make good and that this country can succeed. Okay,
let's build on that notion of hope and a pragmatic approach to having it. If I am Mwananchi and I wish to go through a process that will end up with a ruling in my favor, will I need the smartest legal brains in the land to take up my case? Because I'm trying to see a building somewhere where people can come with their grievances. Because on the one hand, I've seen the state, and we've got state agencies. I haven't seen the empowerment given to the citizen. I don't see in your explanation where the citizen ought to turn.
Yes. I think I have seen quite a number of cases that have been brought by a number of our communities. And recently, just here in Nairobi, we saw the people of Mukuru, for instance, bringing a case that was supported by the Katiba Institute against the people who hold their lands. In this particular instance, it was about 60,000 households that brought a case against about 20 very, very powerful landowners. And they did get an order from the court. So again, we're beginning to see a reforming judiciary that is more open to looking at cases that they would ordinarily not have been willing to look at in the past. We're also seeing a change in the law. If we look at our law previously, a title was almost sacrosanct. And basically what the law said is that you could not question this title, even if unless it had been fraudulently obtained. So,
but now you can.
Now you can. And that is a provision in our laws. So of course the jurisprudence and the law is changing. And to a large extent, it is to the benefit of the ordinary man.
Access to basic services. We now have the land. The land is ours, but there are no toilets, there's no drainage, there's no electricity. Could you take us along a line of thinking where there's a linkage between quality of life and ownership? Because you could be living in a sort of...
Yes, it is very difficult to get a proper living conditions without looking at the issue of ownership. And the challenge in many of the urban areas within our cities is that we've commercialized poverty. And that is very, very much unlike many other countries. And what I mean by this is that we have a situation where we have landowners who never bothered to develop, and then their land was encroached upon, and not by poor people, were encroached upon by middle-class people who paid a bribe to a chief. And then these middle-class people put out rows and rows and rows of shanty houses without a toilet, without a bathroom, without any facilities. And then they rented them out, and now they're renting them out for 2,000 shillings for a 10 by 10. So basically we're saying the people who are actually benefiting from this situation is the middleman, not the landowner and not the person who is living in the slum. So the issue of land tenure must be looked at. So the city or the county government has an opportunity to come in and replan this area, because without replanning, you cannot even lay a pipe. There's no space for putting a road or for putting a pipe for water. So the replanning of this area is very crucial, and that must be the role of county governments.
Another image that comes to my mind is the post-election violence 2007-2008, and the idea where painting the poor here as a sort of homogeneous whole, loving each other by nature of the fact that they are poor. But even in those slums like Kibera, Madari, there was the whole idea of ethnicity and, you know, brother turned against brother and sister, tribalism, what you will. So is this going to go away by virtue of simple legislation?
No. It cannot go away.
Right, but it seemed to be the problem. But no, people were unsafe.
Yes.
You know, cowering in one age and being saved by. So in other words, because you were talking about a disunity coming together to give up funds.
Yes.
But I'm saying the kind of unity that is there is tribal unity, not national unity.
And I think that is part of the work that we must do. And that is part of the work that we attempt and are always trying to do, by getting people to come together and save regardless of religion, of tribe, and of ethnicity.
So there's sort of civic education programs that you take on board.
Yes.
And they are successful.
Yes, because we have seen people coming together and purchasing property regardless of the fact that you're a Kikuyu, a Luo, or a Kamba, and creating an association and an organization and a community that goes beyond ethnicity.
Right. So the last question,
yes.
I want you to summarize everything, and I'm going to be somewhat cynical in saying there is no real future for the urban poor. What is your final riposte to put me at my ease and say I'm wrong?
John, you're wrong. You're wrong because if there is no hope for the urban poor, there is no hope for you, and there's no hope for me. Because we live in a city where we are so interconnected. If, for instance, somebody in Kibera does not have a toilet and is therefore using a flying toilet, that whatever he throws out ends up in the river and ends up in my pipe eventually. So there is hope, because there has to be hope for this country. And I believe that when people begin to realize that our lives are very interconnected, that I am because you are as well, then there is a way forward. And I'm sure that we as Kenyans will begin to see that.
Jane Weru, Urban Land Specialist, thank you so very much for coming on the JSO interview.
Thank you so much, John.